There comes a moment in life when silence becomes more powerful than revenge. A moment when you stop explaining yourself, stop defending your heart, and stop begging someone to see your worth. And for a narcissist, that moment becomes terrifying, because the day you treat them like they no longer exist is the day their control begins to die. A narcissist survives on attention. They feed on your reactions, your emotions, your pain, your confusion. Every argument gives them energy. Every emotional response reminds them they still have power over your mind. But the moment you emotionally detach, something shifts inside them. They can no longer predict you. They can no longer manipulate your feelings. And suddenly, the person they once controlled becomes unreachable. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone who thrives on control is to become emotionally unavailable to them. At first, they may not believe it. They may test you. They may send messages, play mind games, act kind for a moment, or even try to make you jealous. Not because they love you deeply, but because they cannot accept losing influence over someone they once dominated. Your silence becomes louder than any argument you could ever make. And this is where many people fail. They think healing means proving a point. They think strength means winning the final argument. But true power is different. True power is no longer needing to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. There are moments in life when people expect you to fight back, defend yourself, argue louder, or prove your worth. They expect emotion from you because they are used to controlling you through your reactions. But one of the most powerful transformations a person can experience is realizing that silence can achieve what revenge never could. Silence is not weakness. It is emotional discipline. It is self-respect. It is the moment you stop giving your energy to someone who survives on draining it. Most toxic people are not searching for peace. They are searching for emotional access. They want your anger, your sadness, your explanations, and your attention. Every reaction becomes proof that they still live inside your mind. That is why arguments with manipulative people never truly end. Even when you win the conversation, you lose emotional energy. They keep pulling you back into the same cycle because the cycle itself is their source of power. But the moment you become silent emotionally, something changes completely. You stop defending yourself against false accusations. You stop explaining your pain to people who enjoy causing it. You stop trying to force someone to understand what they never cared to understand in the first place. And in that silence, you begin to recover parts of yourself that were lost in constant emotional battles. Revenge often keeps people emotionally connected to those who hurt them. A person who spends every day thinking about how to hurt someone back is still mentally controlled by the past. Their peace still depends on another person's suffering. But silence is different. Silence says, I no longer need your apology to move forward. I no longer need your validation to feel valuable. That is true emotional independence. Many people misunderstand silence. They think it means weakness, fear, or surrender. But in reality, silence requires enormous strength. It takes strength to walk away instead of reacting impulsively. It takes strength to control your emotions when someone is trying to provoke you intentionally. It takes strength to remain calm while others attempt to create chaos around you. Silence also protects your mental health. Constant conflict destroys emotional stability. It keeps the mind trapped in stress, anxiety, and overthinking. But when you stop feeding toxic situations with emotional reactions, your mind slowly becomes lighter. You begin sleeping peacefully again. Your confidence starts returning. You rediscover joy in small moments that were once buried under emotional exhaustion. The most powerful part about silence is that it shifts the balance completely. Toxic people are prepared for anger. They are prepared for tears. They are prepared for arguments. But they are not prepared for emotional detachment. They become confused when they can no longer control your responses. Your calmness becomes unpredictable to them because your emotions are no longer available for manipulation. Over time, silence becomes healing. You begin to realize that not every battle deserves your attention. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every toxic person deserves access to your energy. Maturity is understanding that peace is more valuable than proving a point. And eventually, you stop feeling the need to win against people who tried to hurt you. Your happiness becomes the victory. Your growth becomes the response. Your peace becomes the proof that you survived everything that once tried to destroy you. Many people do not realize that narcissistic behavior survives through emotional attention. A narcissist does not always seek love in the healthy sense. What they truly crave is control, validation, admiration, and emotional influence over others. They feel powerful when they can affect your emotions. Your sadness, your anger, your confusion, and even your attempts to fix the relationship become proof that they still matter deeply to you. That emotional reaction becomes their fuel. This is why conversations with manipulative people often feel emotionally exhausting. No matter how calmly you explain yourself, the discussion somehow turns into blame, guilt, or emotional chaos. The goal is not resolution. The goal is emotional dominance. They want to keep you emotionally engaged because once you become emotionally detached, their control begins to weaken. Every reaction feeds the cycle. When you argue constantly, they feel important. When you cry because of their behavior, they feel powerful. When you chase answers, demand explanations, or beg for honesty, they recognize that your emotions are still attached to them. Even negative attention can satisfy their need for control because the connection itself matters more than whether the attention is positive or negative. That is why many toxic people create unnecessary drama. Peace does not give them emotional satisfaction. Chaos does. They may start arguments over small issues, twist your words, ignore your feelings, or create confusion intentionally. They know that emotional instability keeps you focused on them. The more emotionally exhausted you become, the easier it is for them to maintain influence over your mind. One of the most painful parts of dealing with a narcissistic personality is the emotional inconsistency. Sometimes they may appear loving, caring, or deeply understanding. Other times they become cold, dismissive, or cruel. This emotional unpredictability creates confusion inside the other person. You begin chasing the good version of them, hoping things will return to how they've once seemed in the beginning. But this emotional cycle is often what keeps people trapped for years. A narcissist fears emotional irrelevance more than conflict. Conflict still keeps them emotionally connected to you, but indifference threatens their sense of control completely. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, stop defending yourself constantly, and stop seeking their approval, they begin losing the emotional power they once had over you. This is why emotional boundaries are so important. Boundaries are not about punishing others. They are about protecting your peace. When you stop giving endless emotional access to toxic people, your mental clarity improves. You begin thinking more clearly because your emotions are no longer controlled by constant manipulation. Over time, you start recognizing patterns you once ignored. You realize that some people only return when they feel you moving on. Some people apologize only when they fear losing control. Some people create emotional pain simply because your suffering keeps them feeling significant. And once you recognize these patterns, you stop personalizing their behavior. Healing begins when you stop believing it is your responsibility to fix emotionally destructive people. You cannot heal someone who refuses accountability. You cannot build peace with someone addicted to control. The only thing you truly control is your response. And the moment you stop feeding manipulation with emotional energy, the entire dynamic begins to collapse. Your silence becomes stronger than arguments. Your calmness becomes stronger than chaos, and your emotional detachment becomes the one thing a narcissist cannot control anymore. Emotional detachment is one of the hardest forms of healing because it requires you to let go not only of a person, but also of the emotional addiction connected to them. Many people believe freedom begins when they block a number, walk away from a relationship, or stop speaking to someone toxic. But real freedom is deeper than physical distance. True healing happens when your emotions no longer depend on that person's attention, approval, or presence. A person can disappear from your life physically and still control your mind every single day. You may stop talking to them, but still replay old conversations in your head. You may avoid seeing them, yet still wonder if they miss you, regret hurting you, or think about you. That emotional attachment keeps the wound alive. Emotional detachment begins when you slowly stop centering your life around those thoughts. This process is painful because humans naturally seek closure, understanding, and emotional resolution. When someone hurts you deeply, part of you wants answers. You want them to admit what they did. You want them to apologize sincerely. You want them to finally recognize your value. But emotional freedom starts when you accept that some people may never give you the closure you deserve. That acceptance changes everything. Instead of waiting for them to heal your pain, you begin healing yourself. Instead of searching for validation from someone emotionally unhealthy, you begin rebuilding your self-worth internally. You stop depending on another person's behavior to determine your peace. And slowly, your emotional strength begins returning. Detachment does not mean becoming cold-hearted or emotionless. It means learning to protect your emotional energy wisely. It means recognizing that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart. Some people only enter your life to drain your peace, weaken your confidence, and keep you emotionally unstable. Detachment is choosing not to participate in that cycle anymore. One of the biggest signs of emotional growth is no longer reacting immediately to toxic behavior. Before healing, even small actions from a manipulative person could ruin your entire day. A message, an insult, a cold response, or emotional rejection could consume your thoughts for hours. But emotional detachment changes your reactions. You begin observing people instead of absorbing them. Their behavior stops defining your emotional state. This transformation takes time. Healing is not instant. Some days you may feel strong, while other days old emotions return unexpectedly. Memories may still hurt. Loneliness may tempt you to reconnect with people you know are unhealthy for you. But every time you choose peace over emotional chaos, you strengthen your self-respect. Detachment also teaches an important lesson. Love should not require suffering to survive. Healthy relationships do not constantly leave you emotionally exhausted, anxious, or questioning your worth. Real connection brings emotional safety, honesty, and mutual respect. Once you experience emotional clarity, you stop romanticizing toxic behavior. Eventually, you reach a stage where the person who once controlled your emotions no longer has that power. Their actions no longer determine your mood. Their absence no longer feels unbearable. Their opinions no longer shape your identity. You stop chasing explanations, apologies, and emotional crumbs. And that is true freedom, not revenge, not hatred, not proving anything, just peace. The kind of peace that comes when your heart finally realizes it deserves more than manipulation, confusion, and emotional pain. The kind of peace that allows you to move forward without carrying the emotional weight of someone who never truly valued your soul. Nothing disturbs a narcissistic person more than seeing someone they once controlled become peaceful without them. Manipulative people often believe they will always have emotional access to the people they hurt. They assume that even after the relationship ends, they will still live inside your mind through pain, confusion, anger, or emotional attachment. That belief gives them a sense of power. But the moment they see you healing, smiling, and rebuilding your life without needing them, something inside them begins to break. Your peace becomes their nightmare because it destroys the illusion of control. A narcissist often expects emotional reactions. They expect you to chase closure, demand answers, or remain emotionally stuck in the memories they created. They may even expect you to stay broken long after they leave. But when you begin focusing on your own growth instead of their behavior, the emotional dynamic changes completely. Suddenly, they are no longer the center of your emotional world. This is why many toxic people return when they sense you moving on. Not always because they genuinely miss you, but because your healing threatens their ego. They become uncomfortable watching someone they underestimated become emotionally strong. Your independence reminds them that their control was temporary, not permanent. Peace is powerful because it cannot be manipulated easily. Anger can be provoked, sadness can be exploited, emotional desperation can be controlled. But inner peace creates emotional distance. It removes the chaos that toxic people depend on to maintain influence. The calmer you become, the less power manipulation has over you. Many people think healing must be loud or dramatic. They imagine revenge, public exposure, or emotional payback, but often the strongest response is quiet transformation. It is waking up one day and realizing you no longer feel emotionally destroyed by someone who once consumed your thoughts every hour. It is rediscovering your confidence after years of emotional confusion. It is learning to enjoy your life again without constantly looking over your shoulder for validation. Your peace also forces toxic people to confront something they try to avoid within themselves: emptiness. Manipulative individuals often distract themselves through control, attention, and emotional games because they struggle internally with insecurity and instability. When your emotional reactions disappear, they lose the mirror they used to feel powerful. Your silence leaves them alone with themselves. This does not mean you should focus your healing on hurting them emotionally. True peace is not performance. It is not pretending to be happy just to make someone jealous. Real peace happens when you genuinely stop needing them to suffer in order for you to feel whole again. That emotional independence is what makes healing authentic. There is something deeply powerful about becoming emotionally unavailable to toxicity. You stop explaining your boundaries repeatedly. You stop allowing guilt to pull you back into unhealthy cycles. You stop sacrificing your mental health to keep difficult people comfortable. Instead, you choose stability, self-respect, and emotional clarity. Over time, the person who once manipulated your emotions loses access completely. They may still try to return through memories, fake apologies, or emotional games, but your mindset has changed. You no longer confuse attention with love. You no longer confuse chaos with passion. You no longer confuse emotional suffering with connection. And that is why your peace becomes so threatening to them, because the healed version of you can no longer be controlled. One of the most painful realities in life is accepting that some people will never change, no matter how much love, patience, or understanding you give them. Many people stay trapped in toxic relationships because they hold on to hope. They believe that if they explain themselves better, love harder, forgive more, or sacrifice enough of themselves, the other person will finally become kind, honest, or emotionally healthy. But healing begins the moment you stop falling in love with potential and start accepting reality for what it truly is. Acceptance is difficult because it forces you to let go of the version of the person you wanted them to be. Sometimes people do not miss who someone really was. They miss the idea of who they hoped that person would eventually become. That illusion keeps them emotionally attached even after repeated pain. They remember the rare moments of kindness and ignore the consistent patterns of manipulation, disrespect, or emotional harm. Toxic people often survive because others keep giving them endless chances. They apologize without changing. They repeat the same harmful behaviors while expecting forgiveness again and again. And many emotionally caring people stay because they confuse loyalty with self-destruction. They believe walking away makes them selfish, when in reality, staying in constant emotional pain is slowly destroying their sense of self. Healing starts when you recognize patterns instead of excuses. You stop saying, maybe they didn't mean it, You stop saying, maybe they'll change soon. You stop saying, maybe if I love them more, things will improve. Instead, you begin looking at actions instead of promises. Mature healing is understanding that words without consistent behavior mean nothing. Someone can say they care about you while repeatedly damaging your mental health. Someone can apologize while continuing the same toxic cycle. Real change is visible through actions, not emotional speeches. Accepting reality also means understanding that some people are fully aware of the pain they cause. This truth can feel heartbreaking because many empathetic individuals naturally assume others think and feel the same way they do. They cannot imagine intentionally hurting someone they love, so they struggle to believe others can behave without guilt or empathy. But emotional maturity requires accepting that not everyone operates from kindness, honesty, or emotional responsibility. The moment you stop trying to rescue toxic people, your energy begins returning to you. For so long, your focus may have been entirely on fixing them, calming them, understanding them, or surviving their emotional instability. But healing shifts your attention inward. You begin asking different questions. Instead of asking, how do I make them love me better? You ask, why am I accepting less than I deserve? That question changes everything, because once you value your peace, you stop tolerating repeated emotional damage. You stop chasing people who only appreciate you when they fear losing access to you. You stop sacrificing your mental health to maintain relationships built on instability and control. Acceptance does not mean the pain disappears overnight. Some truths hurt deeply. Some endings feel unfair. Some betrayals leave emotional scars that take time to heal. But denial prolongs suffering, while acceptance creates freedom. Eventually, you realize that healing is not about changing toxic people. It is about changing your relationship with yourself. It is about choosing self-respect over emotional dependency. It is about understanding that love should never require losing your identity, your confidence, or your peace. And once you truly accept reality, you stop waiting for unhealthy people to become healthy before allowing yourself to finally move forward. The final stage of healing is not anger, revenge, or emotional obsession. It is indifference. That quiet, peaceful state where someone who once controlled your emotions no longer has power over your mind. Many people think healing means hating the person who hurt them, but hatred still creates emotional attachment. When you hate someone deeply, they still occupy space inside your thoughts. True freedom begins when you no longer feel emotionally controlled by their presence or absence. Indifference is powerful because it cannot be manipulated. Toxic people often know how to respond to anger. They know how to react when you cry, argue, or demand explanations. But emotional detachment confuses them because they no longer know how to reach you internally. Your calmness becomes untouchable. At first, healing rarely feels like indifference. In the beginning, there is usually pain, disappointment, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. You replay memories repeatedly in your mind. You question yourself constantly. You wonder why someone who claimed to care about you could treat you with such emotional cruelty. There may even be moments where you blame yourself for staying too long or trusting too deeply. But over time, something slowly changes. You stop checking whether they viewed your message. You stop wondering who they are with. You stop imagining conversations that will never happen. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. And without realizing it, your emotional dependence begins fading away. This transformation is not sudden. It happens quietly through small moments of self-respect. Every time you choose not to reopen old wounds, you grow stronger. Every time you refuse to respond to manipulation, you reclaim your peace. Every time you focus on your own future instead of their behavior, your emotional independence deepens. Indifference is not cruelty. It is emotional closure. There is a major difference between pretending not to care and genuinely reaching a place of inner peace. Pretending requires effort. Genuine healing feels natural. You no longer force yourself to ignore them because your emotions simply stop revolving around them. Their choices no longer define your worth. Their rejection no longer damages your confidence. Their attention no longer feels necessary for your happiness. That is when the toxic cycle truly ends. Many manipulative people expect emotional access forever. They assume you will always miss them, think about them, or remain emotionally available whenever they decide to return. But indifference removes that access completely. It tells them, without words, that your life no longer depends on their presence. And that realization can be deeply unsettling for someone who once thrived on controlling your emotions. The beautiful thing about indifference is that it creates space for a healthier life. Once your energy is no longer consumed by emotional chaos, you begin reconnecting with yourself again. Your mind becomes clearer. Your confidence slowly rebuilds. You start enjoying simple moments without carrying constant emotional heaviness inside your heart. You also begin recognizing your value more clearly. You understand that real love should bring emotional safety, not constant anxiety. You stop romanticizing toxic behavior. You stop confusing manipulation with passion. And most importantly, you stop abandoning yourself just to keep unhealthy people in your life. Eventually, the person who once felt impossible to forget becomes emotionally distant in your memory. Not because the past never mattered, but because you finally outgrew the pain attached to it. And that is the real victory, not revenge, not proving anything, not making them suffer. Just becoming emotionally free enough that their power over you disappears completely.